think a few more people are still coming. But we can go ahead and get started. So hello everyone, and welcome once again for this month's Nekor webcast, following in the footsteps of the Lotus-Born Guru, the life and liberation of Guru Rinpoche. So this is our fourth edition during this year-long journey that we're taking through Guru Rinpoche's life story. And I just want to welcome everybody who has been joining us for the last 4 months in this journey. So welcome back. We're very happy to see you all again. And for those that are just joining us for the first time, welcome. We're excited to have you. Many of you probably have met us if you have been joining us the last 4 months, or maybe you've met us in person. But I just want to introduce myself. I'm Robbie. I am the MC of the event. I'll be presenting the general framework, and we are joined by 3 others, Stefan, Peter, and Noor, who will introduce themselves.
Hello everybody, welcome back and happy Guru Rinpoche Day. I'm Stefan. I'm joining you from Spain today, from Catalonia, from the Pyrenees Mountains. And I'll again share with you the historical background of the sacred sites and the stories as well, along with the others. Thank you, happy to have you.
Hello everyone, happy Guru Rinpoche Day. Good to see everyone again. I'm Peter. I'm zooming in from Samye, New York, in Cooperstown, New York. I'll be sharing some of the stories that unfolded at the sites we'll be covering today. Good to see everyone.
Hello everybody, happy Guru Rinpoche Day. I'm Noor, and I am joining today from Bodhanath in Nepal, and I will be primarily sharing quotations from the principal biography of Guru Rinpoche that we are following for this webcast series called the Pema Katang. And I'm also very happy to see you all again.
Thank you, guys. So as always, any good outcome starts with a good motivation. So we'll set the motivation to begin this webcast. By the power and the truth of our gathering here today, may all sentient beings enjoy happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the great happiness devoid of suffering, and may they dwell in the great equanimity that is free from attachment and aversion. Having set that motivation, we now invoke Guru Rinpoche, as we do in each webcast. This time we are turning towards Kyabje Tukul Urgyen Rinpoche with the 6 Vajra lines, or the Disun Sangye prayer. So let us now turn to that. So just to recap what we've done in the last, well, we'll just recap from last week. our previous webcast, we explored Guru Rinpoche alongside Mandarava, the Zahorian princess. And together we journeyed with them into Zahor, and from Zahor to Maratika, where they attained the Vidyadhara level and of the immortal Vidyadhara level through the attainment of the rainbow body. This month, in the 9th month of the Tibetan lunar calendar, we honor Guru Rinpoche's attainment of the Mahamudra Vidyadhara. Our webcast will focus on his sacred journey towards the 3rd Vidyadhara level in Nepal. We will examine Guru Rinpoche's meeting with his spiritual consort, Belmo Shakyadevi, at the Swayambhu Stupa, which many of you may have visited. If you haven't visited yet, we will be going there this coming Losar. So we're going to explore the meeting of this particular consort, Belmo Shakyadevi, and his realization at the sacred caves of Asura and Yanglesho through the Vajrakilaya practice, and then his subsequent subjugation of malevolent spirits at Yarinak and Chumik Changchup, which are both also located in Nepal. Today marks, as I said, the 4th episode of our webcast series, where we are journeying chronologically through Guru Rinpoche's life story. If you missed any of the previous episodes, you can catch up, or if you just want to go back and re-listen, we have them all posted on our YouTube page, Nekor's YouTube channel. So if you want to scan the QR code, or you can just visit YouTube, if you type in Nekor, you'll find our channel there. Okay, so that being said, I'll turn it now over to Noor.
Hello again. So first, I would just like to take a second to thank everybody who donated for these webcasts last month. Each of our episodes that we produce cost about $3,000 to make. And it's only like we're all working on donations. And so I would really like to encourage anybody who finds this webcast as meaningful to them to consider donating to this webcast so we can continue producing them. Nekor is such a wonderful project because it's committed to like doing research about pilgrimage sites and to find out more about all these sacred places related to Guru Rinpoche and Vajrayana Buddhism in general. And it's only all possible because of donations. So I would just like to take a second here to thank everybody who donated for donating to us, and to encourage anybody who might be wondering about it to inform you that, you know, you could donate us something from a small amount like $3. Like it can be a one-time payment. You can do recurring payments every month as you can, of course. And these, you know, you could do this on DonorBox and Patreon. And the QR code is on the screen still. Or you could also visit samyatranslations.org/donate to donate to us. Yeah, so I really encourage everybody to do that. Thank you very much.
So let's begin with our webcast here. And as you may recall in the previous sessions, we briefly at the beginning always visited one sort of more general topic to introduce who Guru Rinpoche is and to explore the nature of Guru Rinpoche, but also the awakened Dakinis and other masters and disciples who worked alongside Guru Rinpoche to fulfill this grand enlightened vision. And today we wanted to look with you at the renowned Barche Lamsel prayer called Dispelling All Obstacles on the Path. And this very profound prayer is a Tema revelation of the great Tibetan Terchen Chukshudeshin Lingpa. And it's very significant for our webcast today, since several of the manifestations mentioned in this Barche Lamsel prayer, are directly related to the sacred sites today in Nepal that also Robbie before already mentioned. So it's a very beautiful prayer, and while many of us have heard it already many times, maybe chanting it in the Gompas or reading it online, Monica will also share with you a link in the chat for those who would like to revisit the prayer itself. But it was very beautifully that Patrul Rinpoche elaborated upon this very beautiful prayer in connection to the practices of Guru Yoga associated with it, and what all of these individual manifestations that you can also see here on the Tanka of Guru Rinpoche signify. And we have placed a QR code here so you can revisit actually the full teachings of Patrul Rinpoche, which are online. And Rinpoche gave those very precious teachings in 2017, quite a while ago, following the empowerments of the Tuktu Bache Kunze cycle by Kyabche Tsike Choling Rinpoche. So it was a very unique occasion, and you can find the full teachings there for those interested. And Monica will also share separately the link to those. So turning to the prayer itself, it was a very beautiful occasion in Samye Monastery when Guru Rinpoche's heart disciples, led by Dharma King Tritsun Detsen, Kando Yeshe Tsogel, and the Prince Murup Tsempo, requested Guru Rinpoche for the means to dispel the obstacles that all of us practitioners face upon the path. And they made this request along with a vast offering. And Guru Rinpoche graciously accepted their request, and he placed his right hand on the head of Kando Yeshe Tsogel, his left hand on the head of Dharma King Tritsun Detsen, and with his forehead he gently touched the forehead of Prince Murup Tsempo. All three of those disciples were in their request kneeling in front of Guru Rinpoche or bowing. And then Guru Rinpoche began to recite this very famous prayer. And this prayer then was subsequently hidden by Kando Yeshe Tsogel and the other disciples as a Terma treasure, and later revealed by Terchen Chokshedeshin Lingpa. And what I mentioned in the beginning, which is very beautiful, is, and you can also explore in Rinpoche's teachings, is that each of these manifestations actually, so the entire prayer recounts the life story of Guru Rinpoche. And the manifestations that you can see here are essential qualities that Guru Rinpoche, in this sort of phases of his life, or in these moments of profound practice and realization, accomplished. So through the prayer, through the practice, through Guru Rinpoche, invoking Guru Rinpoche in general, through whatever practice, also all of these qualities are already embodied. But if we were to sort of elaborate and break it down, then you can also see here this manifestation, for example, in the Tuktu Bache Kunze practice here, that many are familiar, the particular mandala that you also see here on the screen now, yeah? And so here the prayer begins with Dharmakaya Amitayus, also identical from Buddha Amitabha, manifesting in the form then of Sambhogakaya Avalokiteshvara, and then as Nirmanakaya Padmasambhava. So as we learned in the first webcast, and as you see in the biographies of Guru Rinpoche, is that Guru Rinpoche was born from the heart of Buddha Amitabha or Amitayus, they're identical, through the compassion of Avalokiteshvara manifesting as the syllable Sri, and then descending upon the lotus flower that you now can see Guru Rinpoche in the center of the Tanka, and manifesting as Guru Rinpoche, yeah? And then surrounding on the Tanka, you can see the 12 manifestations. And here it begins with Gyalva Dungzin, which is on the bottom right. And Gyalve Dungzin represents Guru Rinpoche's intense practice in the Chana grounds. So this is the form that then Guru Rinpoche manifested. And it's very much represents the quality of magnetizing. So each of those 12 manifestations here represents an essential quality that all of us practitioner needs. So here it embodies the principle of magnetizing, whether it's the accomplishment, whether it's wealth, whether it's positive circumstances, all of that we can magnetize through this practice and through connecting to Guru Rinpoche. Then next we have Mave Sengye appearing, as we learned in the second webcast, as in Bodh Gaya, where Guru Rinpoche took ordination with Aryananda, the disciple of Buddha Shakyamuni, the closest disciple and upholder of the Buddha Shakyamuni's lineage, as well as his Guru Prabhahasti. And then later again, as we will learn today in Asura and Yangleshö, where Guru Rinpoche refined the Vajrakilaya teachings alongside other great Panditas. So here very much Guru Rinpoche embodies the principle of learning, contemplation, study, and wisdom. And in Bodh Gaya, the other name that we saw that is also here connected to Mave Sengye is Shakya Sengye, under which Guru Rinpoche was ordained. Then we turn to the next, the third, which is Kichok Tsulsang. And sorry, I wanted to point out Mave Sengye, you can see here. And then Kichok Tsulsang is in the left upper corner, yeah? But if you follow the link to Patrok Rinpoche's teaching, there's also an individual image so you can see it more precisely, yeah? So Kichok Tsulsang represents spiritual wealth. So this not only includes the outer circumstances of the financial support, but also, of course, conducive circumstances to practice, such as family, friends, relatives, and of course, Dhamma or Vajra brothers and siblings. And Guru Rinpoche manifested this particularly in Nepal at Chumik Changchup, which we will learn about. Next manifestation is we have Duki Shechen, which is in the bottom left corner. And Duki Shechen, Guru Rinpoche manifested especially at Asura cave at Yangleshö and later at Yarinak. And here Guru Rinpoche displayed the accomplishment through Vajrakilaya and the overcoming of all obstacles. Subsequently, then Guru Rinpoche engaged in the practice of Yangdak Heruka. We will learn about this in more depth. And displayed the manifestation of Tsamling Gyengchok, which you can see here. And as Tsamling Gyengchok, Guru Rinpoche embodies the principles of gaining profound and supreme cities. Yeah? And the sixth, here we have the manifestation of Pema Jungne here. And as Pema Jungne, Guru Rinpoche manifested, as we learned in the last webcast, in the country of Sahor. And this includes both the events that unfolded in Sahor, as well as Maratika, as well as the later accomplishments of taming Greater India and turning them to the Dharma. So here it symbolizes Guru Rinpoche's blessings, cities, and liberations, for which he also transformed the kingdom and established it into the Dharma. Then the seventh is Kepa Pakperiksin, which appeared, Guru Rinpoche appeared later when leaving from Nepal towards Tibet. And here we have Guru Rinpoche's activity of subduing or taming and transforming the unruly spirits that faced Guru Rinpoche. And in this particular manifestation, it's also connected with purifying the world and the environment, which is very much connected to also spiritual forces, yeah? Spirit forces. And then we have the eighth, which is Tsutru Tuchen, or Guru Dojidrolo. And here Guru Rinpoche appeared in this particular form within Tibet itself, subduing the last remaining malevolent forces, for example, up on Mount Hippori, as well as transforming the negativity and really laying the ground for the establishment of Samye monastery. And later as well, in the activity of hiding the profound Terma treasures, Guru Rinpoche reassumed this particular form. Then we have Doje Drakputsal, which Guru Rinpoche, so sorry, here's Guru Doje Drolo. And then we have Guru Doje Drakputsal here, yeah. And then Guru Rinpoche manifested in this form to give and bestow the Vajrayana teachings, and especially the Lamye Shiningpo at Samye Monastery. So next we have the manifestation of Khalden Drense, at which Guru Rinpoche initiated his students to in Samye Chimpu to the Kage Mandala, so establishing the students and giving them the respective Yidam deity. Then the 11th, we have Raksha Tritangsal, which Guru Rinpoche manifested in Sangdopari, liberating the Rakshasa king and embodying the principle of protection. And finally, we have Dejing Gyalpo, in which Guru Rinpoche unveiled his ultimate Buddha essence and is connected to the principle very much of healing and well-being. So then we have the other manifestations in the Tanka, which is Khalden Drense. Then we have Guru Raksha Trecheng, and this is Dejing Gyalpo, this is Guru Khalden Drense, and then Guru Raksha Trecheng. The image is a little bit small here, but then later you can review it following, for example, the QR code. So we wanted to give you this brief overview, seeing, for example, how this very beautiful prayer relates to the entire life and recounting the life story of Guru Rinpoche, and how also the practitioners through Guru Rinpoche can connect with these very essential aspects of the path and spiritual growth, and really transform our circumstances. Then this prayer we will get to at the respective points of the webcasts, and it very beautifully, which we will later point out, also invokes Guru Rinpoche after naming each manifestation in a very beautiful devotional form, which sometimes is recited independently and forms a very beautiful heartfelt invocation of Guru Rinpoche. So then turning to our webcast today. So the point where we left off the last time was with Guru Padmasambhava and Lachan Mandarava establishing the kingdoms in the Dharma, following their attainment of immortality at Maratika caves. And Guru Rinpoche and Lachan Mandarava, now in these immortal bodies of light, travel throughout the entire greater Indian subcontinent, spreading the Dharma everywhere and establishing the kingdoms and the people in the Dharma, and thus benefiting the Dharma and securing the Dharma for a long term. So thanks to these activities, we're also receiving the Dharma today. And there comes the point where Guru Rinpoche establishes Lachan Mandarava as his successor in India. So he gives Lachan Mandarava the task to continue to guard the Dharma and protect the teachings and spread the teachings throughout India. And you can read, if you're interested about that, more not only in our Guru Rinpoche book series, but you can also find more in the life story of Lachan Mandarava herself, which is translated as The Life and Liberation of Princess Mandarava, if I'm not mistaken, and it's still, I think, available online. So Guru Rinpoche himself at this point then departs, and Guru Rinpoche again is drawn towards Nepal. So at this point within the life of Guru Rinpoche himself, where Guru Rinpoche is entering now the third time Nepal. So the very first time, as we learned, was for his practice in Lunduptsek Chana ground. Then his second time in the last webcast was for the attainment of immortality at Maratika. And now again, for the third time, Guru Rinpoche again intends to even further deepen his realization and really reach the full fruition of awakening. So it's in this moment that Guru Rinpoche again turns to Nepal as his retreat place. So Nepal has a very profound significance. And we can see here again on the map the various places that Guru Rinpoche visited. And here again, we're zooming in on Nepal itself. And Guru Rinpoche, on his return to Nepal, is drawn naturally to the Swayambhu Stupa, the great stupa in the Kathmandu Valley, overtowering the whole area of Kathmandu. And here, Guru Rinpoche in Nepal, on his return, first meets one of his gurus called Guru and Vidyadhara Umchinkara, who was the great upholder of the Yangda-Keruka teachings. And Guru Rinpoche receives those teachings most likely in the area of Patan. And we will look into this more into the next webcast, probably. And then equipped with these teachings, which would grant him the next profound accomplishment, Guru Rinpoche approaches the Swayambhu Stupa, knowing that here another disciple awaited Guru Rinpoche, and that is the great wisdom Dakini Belmo Shakyadevi, who took birth near the Swayambhu Stupa. And Guru Rinpoche knew in his wisdom mind that this extraordinary Dakini was at the verge of entering into the Dharma, and not only that, progressing very fast, but also being the right disciple with whom he could unlock these higher stages of the path and bring this great wisdom Dakini to the same level of realization. So this is where Guru Rinpoche then approaches the Swayambhu Stupa, which is on a beautiful forest-covered hills in the outskirts of Kathmandu, overtowering the entire valley. And Guru Rinpoche was already aware of the beautiful history that this great stupa shares. So here you can see some more images here in the evening light, the sun setting over the Swayambhu Stupa. And then we also have here a close-up image of the stupa. So the history of the Swayambhu Stupa is very interesting and very profound. And it's recorded in the Swayambhu Purana, which also elaborates upon all the sacred sites of the Kathmandu Valley. And the history tells that long ago in prehistoric times, the whole Kathmandu Valley was a vast lake. And it's actually interesting because archaeological finding also confirmed actually this. And history tells that the Buddha of the previous eon, Vishpashin, flew by and marveled at this lake and dropped a small lotus seed into the lake, from which then spontaneously grew a big lotus flower. And up on this lotus flower appeared sort of a crystal-like stupa, self-arisen, shining with various colors of rainbow light. And at that time, Manyushi, from his abode of Wutaishan mountain, saw this sort of rainbow light appearing and spreading out in all directions. And he was drawn to the light to sort of investigate what caused this great appearance of light. And so he arrived and flew towards the Kathmandu Valley, where he found this beautiful lotus flower growing from the lake and the stupa on top. And then Manjushri, in his compassion, wanted to make this wonderful stupa accessible to all beings to be able to receive its blessings and to make offerings. So he flew further to the Chobar Gorge, which is on the way up to Parping, and he cut with his sword the rock. So this is also where nowadays the Bagmati River exits the Kathmandu Valley. And so all the lake drained, and you had this sort of, what was left was basically the lotus flower with the mountain and the stupa on top. And now, now it happened that generations later, a great king from India traveled to Nepal, and he was called Shankaracharya. Or he was known by various names, also Shantikaradeva. And some actually say that this is Guru Rinpoche, which is interesting. At least one source tells of this. And seeing this naturally arisen stupa, he made great offerings, but then he was also afraid, seeing the nature of beings being constantly degenerating. And he was worried that somebody might potentially harm this crystal stupa. So what this king then did, he started building a small sort of protecting wall, and he started building the initial stupa. And this was the first sort of protection of this wonderful, amazing crystal stupa that then was built on the hill. And from then on, gradually, this was extended till we have the current stupa that you now can also see here on the picture today. Yeah? So that is the history of the Swayambhu Stupa and its blessings. And now we're turning to Peter, who will share with you how Guru Rinpoche met Belmo Shakyadevi.
Thank you, Stefan. So we're now approaching the meeting of Guru Rinpoche and his Nawari consort Belmo Shakyadevi. So Shakyadevi herself, she was an emanation of the wisdom mind of Vajravarahi, born to the king Shubhadara, who was the ruler of this district, Swayambhu. And at her birth, unfortunately, her mother passed away. And so she was sent along with her mother's corpse to the charnel ground surrounding the area. And she was left there with her mother's body. Horrible. But some of the monkeys who inhabited the forest, for those of us who have been to Swayambhu, we know there's many monkeys. Sometimes they call it the monkey temple. So in this story, there are monkeys in the area back then. And one of these monkeys takes a look at the baby, Belmo Shakyadevi, and in this monkey's compassion, this mother monkey's compassion, she adopts Shakyadevi and starts to feed her. So she'll take the leaves and she'll chew them up and give them to the child so that she has food to eat. She'll make a bed for Shakyadevi out of leaves so she has a place to sleep. And like that, Shakyadevi was raised in the charnel ground forests around Swayambhu. And she grew into a beautiful woman in these forests, maybe a little wild, but she again is an emanation, an enlightened emanation. So her qualities began to develop, and soon she started to long for the Dharma. And it was at this time that Guru Rinpoche, knowing that there was a disciple ripe for teaching, for practice, arrived at Swayambhu at this moment that she was also ready. And they met, and she took a look at Guru Rinpoche, radiant as he would be, and immediately knew this was her teacher. And together. Now, Shakyadevi as the student of Guru Rinpoche the guru. They were a pair, and together they would practice. Noor has a beautiful quote on this occasion that she's going to read.
Thank you, Peter. The Guru went on pilgrimage to the temple of Swayambhu. Years before, the royal consort had fallen ill and died. Her corpse was sent to the charnel ground along with a newborn infant. There, a monkey found the infant and raised her. By day, they stayed in the treetops eating fruit. At night, covered in leaves, they slept among the rocks. This was the early life of Belmo Shakyadevi. She had webbing like a swan's between her fingers, by which the Guru knew her as a genuine messenger of swift bliss. Together, they went to the caves at Yanglesho.
Thank you. So with all of these auspicious conditions aligned, Guru Rinpoche and proceeded along with Belmo Shakyadevi, following downwards the stream of the Bagmati River and crossing the Chobar Gorge, and then ascending the pine forested hills of what is nowadays Parping, where they knew two particular sacred caves, which is the Asura cave and the Yangleshö cave. And Guru Rinpoche and Belmo Shakyadevi first settled there. And of course, Guru Rinpoche not only began their retreat there, but also Guru Rinpoche again guided Belmo Shakyadevi through all the stages of the Dharma path. And Belmo Shakyadevi receiving all of these profound instructions. So the site of the retreat nowadays is quite easily accessible for anybody who has been to Nepal. It's in the village or above the village of Barping. And maybe this sort of easy accessibility sometimes potentially makes the caves appear a little bit more ordinary, but it's actually that many great masters have commented that, for example, Kato Riksin Sewang Norbu and other great masters have said and stated that for Vajrayana practitioners of the Nyingma tradition, these two caves where Guru Rinpoche reached this profound attainment are as sacred as Bodh Gaya, where Buddha Shakyamuni attained awakening. And it is these caves that Guru Rinpoche attained the very same realization. So as Vajrayana practitioners and followers of Guru Rinpoche, this is really one of the most wonderful treasure sites that we actually have quite easy sort of access to. And specifically, as you can see here in the image, there are the two caves. So one is higher above on the left side, which is the Asura cave, and one is lower below, which is called the Yangleshö cave. And first of all, the Asura cave, here you can see an image of it, from both the outside and inside. So this is a cave which is ideal actually for the winter time in Nepal. That's sort of a period where actually the cave is very much exposed to the sun. And so it creates a very sort of warm environment where you can outside the cave enjoy the sort of warm sunlight. And you also receive a very beautiful view of all the Himalayan mountains from up there. And it's thanks to Kyatchito Ugyen Rinpoche and his spiritual wife, Sangyum Kunsang Dechen, that this cave was preserved, as you can see it today and enjoy it today. And there was this beautiful retreat center built around and maintained by the monks and nuns associated with this particular lineage. So this is the Asura cave. And within, you see both from outside the cave and here inside an image of the shrine. Yeah? And next we turn to the Yangleshö cave, which is below, just before reaching the village of Parping. And here you can see the cave in the corner, which is not necessarily a full cave, but also a little bit more like a rock overhang. And here's an accomplishment. What you can see when you enter the cave very beautifully and very inspiringly is the head imprint of Guru Rinpoche in the rock above. Yeah, so that's also captured here in this image. And this beautiful retreat place is ideal for example, the summer in Nepal, when the monsoon and the heat are very strong. Then this particular site has a lot of shade from the surrounding sort of jungle. And this site was preserved thanks to Kyabche Rinpoche. And it's sort of these two sites at which both Guru Rinpoche and Belmo Shakyadevi engaged in their retreat. And there's an interesting and beautiful story by Kyabche Rinpoche that is that both caves are actually connected through small cracks in the rock. And it was that Guru Rinpoche and Belmo Shakyadevi, now in their immortal bodies of life, traveled up and down through these cracks, practicing in both sides. Yeah. And so with all of these conditions complete, now Peter will continue to share with you the events that unfolded next.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Guru Rinpoche and Belmo Shakyadevi have now traveled to Yangleshö, Asura, these caves outside of the valley, just outside the valley. And they began their practice, as Stefan mentioned. Guru Rinpoche led Belmo Shakyadevi through all of the stages of practice, to all the aspects of the path, until finally it was time for them to engage in Vajrayana practice. And to do so, Guru Rinpoche opened the mandala of Yangdak Heruka, which is a wrathful form of Vajrasattva, we can say, an embodiment of the Buddha's wisdom mind, wisdom heart. But like Stefan also mentioned, this was a site similar to Bodh Gaya for the Buddha, wherein just like the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, the Maras came and the demons came for Guru Rinpoche and Shakyadevi. They rose up and not only affected their own practice of Yangdak Heruka, but plague came to the land, not only in Nepal, but India, Tibet, famine. For 3 years, this plague came, this famine came, and terrorized not only these practitioners, but the beings of the land, the citizens of Nepal, India, Tibet. And, as they say, the more profound the path, the more profound the obstacles. This is exactly what was happening. So as Guru Rinpoche and Shakyadevi were approaching this incredibly powerful practice, the demons were rising up. And so, like in certain tantric accounts of the Buddha under the Bodhi tree, the Buddha would evoke the wrathful Achala, a wrathful deity, to dispel these obstacles. Some tantric accounts of the Buddha's life story say this. So, like the Buddha, the Guru Rinpoche, the Mahaguru himself, was to call upon a wrathful deity to dispel these obstacles. And so he sent 2 of his heart disciples, 2 Nawari disciples, Jinamitra and Kunla Kun Sashi, to India in search of a wrathful practice that would take care of this terrible plague and terrible famine. And these 2 disciples then traveled. They left the Kathmandu Valley, they went down to the plains, and eventually arrived at Nalanda Monastery, that famous university institute for higher studies. in Bihar, present-day Bihar, India. And there they found Guru Rinpoche's former teacher, Prabhahasti, the Vidyadhara. And Prabhahasti immediately gave these two disciples the texts for Vajrakilaya practice. And the disciples returned laden with these texts, and it said that these texts were so powerful just in themselves as they crossed the border and started to come to the Kathmandu Valley. Some of those obstacles started to tame a bit, started to quell a bit. So now, armed with the texts of Vajrakilaya practice, Guru Rinpoche and Shakyadevi began to practice them together. So Guru Rinpoche combined the practice of Yangda Karuka and Vajrakilaya, and now finally the demons had sort of met their match through the combination of these practices. And Noor, would you read a quote? So at this moment, as Guru Rinpoche is sort of heightening the intensity of his practice, he pronounces to these demon hordes a few memorable lines.
The Guru Rinpoche says in song, horrible, insufferable, harmful ones all, you who transgress the Buddha's word, this lotus flower is immaculate, unsoiled by such muddy stains as these. Living happily, exactly as he wishes, the yogi is armed with method supreme and is free from every bondage. Of this, you foulsome ones are unaware.
So it was in this moment, pronouncing these words, that Guru Rinpoche had brought the obstacle makers under control, and the realization that he and Shakyadevi had sought for in their practice unfolded. Guru Rinpoche was now in his body, inseparable from the mandala of the deities being practiced. In his speech was mantra, magnetizing all to be magnetized, taming unruly forces. His mind was now pure wisdom, unobstructed wakefulness, all the five poisons transmuted into wisdom. And here, at this moment, Guru Rinpoche and Belmo Shakyadevi had achieved the Vidyadhara Mahamudra. And it's said that as part of this moment of realization, a rain of Kila daggers, of these, which is part of the Vajrakilaya practice, began to rain down, completely taming all of these obstacle makers. And actually, if you go to Yangleshö and to Asura today, you can see in the rock black Kila daggers, said to still be there from that very moment. And as that happened, the plague lifted, the famine lifted, crops began to grow again. The animals grew strong and healthy again. The people found themselves healed. And the two, Guru Rinpoche and Belmo Shakyadevi, had achieved their goal and achieved the Vidyadhara of Mahamudra.
So
Now,
then Guru Rinpoche says, or it says in the Pema Katham, when overpowering the Rakshasas, you appear as a youth in Nirmanakaya garb. Your amazing, beautiful form, with its lovely hue, perfect teeth and golden hair, gorgeous, like a youth of 16 years, wearing all the jewel ornaments. Your right hand grips a kila of bronze, subjugating Maras and Rakshasas. Your left hand holds a kila of teak, granting protection to your devoted sons and daughters. Around your neck, you wear a kila of iron. You and the Yidam deity are inseparable. O Zamling Genchuk, manifestation of non-duality, with your compassion, inspire us with your blessing. With your love, guide us and others along the path. With your realization, grant us siddhis. With your power, dispel the obstacles facing us all. Outer obstacles, dispel them externally. Inner obstacles, dispel them internally. Secret obstacles, dispel them into space. In devotion, I pay homage and take refuge in you. Om Ahum Panza Guru Pema Siddhihum. Their success echoed the ancient saying. When you are able to remove all obstacles, there remains no doubt that all the siddhis will come.
Thank you. So the previous quotation that Noor beautifully read out is the first passage that we have here from the Barche Lamsel prayer. And on the image that you can see here on the left-hand side, you have an image of Yangdak Heruka, which Guru Rinpoche accomplished in this moment that Peter shared with you at the Asura cave in Yangleshö. And then on the right-hand side, you have the manifestation of Zamling Gyengchok, which was mentioned, which is this, what we just read out from the Barche Lamsel prayer, and which is this manifestation of Guru Rinpoche that you can see here, accomplishing Yangdak Heruka and gaining these profound cities. So one very interesting event that now unfolded, and Peter already pointed to it in the life story here of Guru Rinpoche, is that Guru Rinpoche bound all the evil spirits that plague the land in this moment. And here we have the episode where, for the first time, you could say, spirits appear in front of Guru Rinpoche and offer their life force. And here we can see that at Asura cave in Yangleshö, how this was unfolding was that 12 goddesses known as the Tenma goddesses, the protecting or guardian goddesses of the teachings, appeared before Guru Rinpoche and offered their life force and said that they would now like to serve the Dharma and protect the Dharma. And Guru Rinpoche accepted them and established them as protectors, not only here particularly of the teachings of Vajrakilaya, but also of the teachings more general. So for example, when we practice Tsok, Gana Chakra, or the feast offering, towards the end, in the more elaborate practice forms, there's always an offering to the Tenma goddesses included. And this is the event where the Tenma goddesses were established as protectors, following Guru Rinpoche and Belmo Shakyadevi's accomplishment. And Kyabche Tsike Choling Rinpoche, while Rinpoche was staying there in Asura cave in Yangleshö, pointed in the direction at one point of Dakshin Kali, which is in the valley behind. And there's one particular temple in the middle. We currently don't have a photo of it, which is called Mata Mandir, or the Mother Temple. And it's sort of a small sort of mountain temple that you can nowadays also go and visit. And actually Rinpoche pointed out that this is a resident, sort of one of the locations where one of the Tenma goddesses resides. Yeah, so this is sort of her particular home. And following the binding of these spirits, another very important event occurred at Asura cave in Yangleshö, and that is that Guru Rinpoche hid Dharma treasures for the very first time. So with the accomplishment of this extremely profound realization, Guru Rinpoche now begins to put down, in a sense, or transform the profound teachings that he has gathered and practiced and accomplished into these essential instructions, Dharma teachings, blessings, and the like to benefit future generations. And he started to hide them in the elements for the benefit of future generations so that their blessings are kept intact. So here, as the Pema Katang captures, and Noor will now share with you, it's the very first time that Guru Rinpoche hid profound Dharma treasures.
So it says, I have written these texts and hidden them as treasures. How could we allow these Dharma jewels to be lost? In the darkest of times, when beings are altogether destitute, just by virtue of writing these texts, the Buddha's teachings will flourish. Already, sentient beings of these degenerate times can't even reach the iron hook of compassion. Don't make things worse for them. Don't create obstacles. Guard and protect these treasures.
So, and as we will see, Guru Rinpoche hid these treasures not only at Asura Cave and Yangleshö itself, where later great masters revealed them, such as Kyabche Dewu Khenso Rinpoche, but basically from this moment onwards began this vast enlightened activity for which Guru Rinpoche is very much known today. And the second thing, so having accomplished these profound practices and then subsequently bound the spirits and hid the Dharma treasures, Guru Rinpoche was joined by two more great Panditas and masters, and that is first the Pandita Vimalamitra from Kashmir, who now joined Guru Rinpoche and Belmo Shakyadevi at Asura Cave and Yangleshö, as well as the yogic master Shila Manju from Nepal. And these three masters all had received teachings prior on Vajrakilaya, for example, from King Indrabhuti, from Dana Samskrita, from the great master and vidyadhara Sri Singha, as well as Pravahasti. And now these great masters were at Asura Cave, and they combined their sort of knowledge of the tradition, of the teachings, of the practice of Vajrakilaya, and sort of reflected upon them and revised them and combined them into one. And this is a famous commentary that still exists today. It's called the Purja Bumna, the black commentary on the on Kila in 100,000 words. And this is basically what most of the Vajrakilaya practices are based upon. And so on the left-hand side here in this image, you can see an image of Vajrakilaya. And then on the right-hand side, you can now see an image of Mave Sengye from the Barche Lamsel prayer. And this was the form that Guru Rinpoche manifested here. And now Noor will share the relevant episode from the Barche Lamsel prayer.
So it says in the Barche Lamsel, when hearing the priceless teachings of the Dharma, your body shines with a dazzling radiance of light. In your right hand, volumes of the Tripitaka. In your left, the text of Kilaya. All these profound teachings have infused your mind, O Pandita of Yangleshö, with your compassion. Inspire us with your blessing. With your love, guide us and others along the path. With your realization, grant us siddhis. With your power, dispel the obstacles facing us all. Outer obstacles, dispel them externally. Inner obstacles, dispel them internally. Secret obstacles, dispel them into space. In devotion, I pay homage and take refuge in you. Om Ahum Benza Guru Padmasambhava.
So what I wanted to briefly mention here is particularly in this prayer, the three lines which begin with your compassion, with your love, and with your realization. So you can really see here a very, very heartfelt invocation of the Guru and what the Guru means for us. So we're really invoking here these essential aspects, the great and vast compassion of Guru Rinpoche, and request the inspiration and blessing to carry us further. And we ask for the love and guidance that brings us along the path. And of course, for Guru Rinpoche's vast realization, such as achieved as Asura Cave and Yangleshö, to also grant us the cities and bring us to the same realization. So it's a very beautiful repetition of this very heartfelt invocation to grant these cities and to then dispel all the obstacles. Yeah? And so what we can see here is that at the Asura Cave in Yangleshö, really a lot of things happened. So we can see this profound attainment, the overcoming of obstacles, the binding of spirits, the hiding of Dharma treasures, the preservation of the Vajrakilaya tradition and teachings. So with all this foundation laid, Guru Rinpoche, we can see what a significant sort of sacred site Asura Cave and Yangleshö actually are. And with this profound sort of accomplishments and with this refinement of the Vajrakilaya tradition, Guru Rinpoche now proceeds to another site called Yarinak, where he enters retreat on Vajrakilaya specifically. And we will come to that in a moment. But before leaving, Guru Rinpoche appoints Belmo Shakyadevi as sort of his heir in a sense, and she continues to remain at Asura Cave in Yangleshö, not only continuing to refine her practice, but also upholding Guru Rinpoche's Dharma tradition. And it's much later, now we're jumping a little bit into the future, when Guru Rinpoche is already in Tibet and he met another great wisdom Dakini called Kandu Yeshe Tsogyal. And on her spiritual journey, Guru Rinpoche sends Kandu Yeshe Tsogyal to Nepal, actually to find her spiritual companion, Achaya Saleh. And while Kandu Yeshe Tsogyal is traveling through Nepal, she visits the various sacred sites of Guru Rinpoche and pays homage to them and receives the blessings. And on this journey, she meets Belmo Shakyadevi at the Asura and Yangleshö caves. And the two Dakinis exchange their teachings, and it's beautifully recorded in Kandu Yeshe Tsogyal's life story, which is also translated and available if you want to go into this in more depth. But to share one brief excerpts and instruction that Belmo Shakyadevi gave to Kandu Yeshe Tsogyal, we have Noor now sharing this passage with you.
Yeah, it's from the book in English called Lady of the Lotus-Born. And here it says, welcome, sister, consort of our only teacher. The doctrines that I hold are few, but through the compassion of the holy organ Sambhava, I have the teachings needed at the time of birth and death, the union of the phases of creation and perfection, the great seal, Mahamudra, instructions on the clear light and the body of illusion. These, whereby the bardo womb is emptied, are the teachings of the Nepali Shakyadeva.
Thank you. So we can see here this beautiful exchange today, just in brief, but you can go into it in more detail. And these two Dakinis continue to exchange teachings as well as on the great perfection. And it's actually beautiful that much later, once also Kandu Yeshe Tsogyal had departed and Belmo Shakyadevi had further deepened in her practice and accomplishment, she and Shila Manju, whom we briefly mentioned before, basically now became propagators also of the lineage of Vajrakilaya and spread these teachings far and wide. And it's also that, for example, for those of you who are practicing Vajrakilaya or Guru Rinpoche, that these lineages go also back to these many disciples that are upholding the legacy of Guru Rinpoche as well. And now we're still with Asura Cave in Yangleshö, and we're now going to turn to Robbie. And Robbie is now going to share a beautiful event of actually Kyabchi Degu Khyentse Rinpoche revealing one of the profound Dharma treasures at Asura Cave in Yangleshö, and by Kyabchi Degu Khyentse Rinpoche.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Stefan. So yeah, I think one of the elements that's good to keep in mind is that these stories of Guru Rinpoche aren't necessarily only things that happen in the past and are left at that. They're still readily accessible by current masters or even pilgrims that travel to these sites. And one such story, as Stefan alluded to, has to do with Kyabje Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. It's recounted to us via Organ Tobgyal Rinpoche. But the story starts with Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche's enthronement when he was just 7 years old in 1917. He was being enthroned as the reincarnation of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo, the great treasure revealer from the 19th century. He was being enthroned by Chechen Gyaltsab at the time. And during this ceremony, Chechen Gyaltsab spoke to the child, and he sort of was testing him to make sure he was really an authentic tulku. And he asked him, if you're truly a reincarnation, you should be able to recall your memories of the past. So he said to the child, think carefully now, what memories can you recall? And reflecting on this, Khyentse Rinpoche had this image come to his mind of a cave covered in trees and branches with a beautiful river flowing in front of it. So this image appeared to him very, very vividly, again and again. Later, while Kyabje Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche was on pilgrimage, he visited the Asura caves, and he kind of had this realization that this image that was coming to his mind was none other than that of Asura, which is very amazing because this 7-year-old in Tibet had certainly never visited Asura in his lifetime in that moment, but it seemed to be a reveal that Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche was in fact an emanation of Guru Rinpoche. But to sort of play this down, which is the tradition for great masters, he told the disciples around him that yes, he had this vision earlier of Asura, but it must have meant that he was probably like a rat or some other part of Guru Rinpoche's retinue at the time. He said sort of, I could never be an emanation of Guru Rinpoche. That would be impossible, but I guess I could be an emanation of a little rat or a mouse who lived there during Guru Rinpoche's time. But his disciples all understood it to mean he was in fact an emanation of Guru Rinpoche himself. Later, he reveals a terma in the lower cave of Yangleshö. So this was actually during Khyentse Rinpoche was doing a retreat there, 7 days retreat in the lower cave, near where the sadhus stay. And on the 5th morning, he asked his attendant, Urgen Shempen, to go off and bathe and come back later once he was clean. When Urgen Shempen returned, he was instructed to prostrate 3 times, and Kyabje Rinpoche handed him a sheet of paper saying that he would now reveal the treasures of what is the famous Rangjung Pema Nintik, the heart essence of the naturally arisen lotus. So at that moment, Khyentse Rinpoche revealed what is probably his most important terma, but his first terma was revealed there. And this sort of shows the vibrancy of this site and how Guru Rinpoche, as Stefan spoke about earlier, leaving these early termas there is something that can still be activated today and kind of points at Guru Rinpoche's activity as being something that's truly, truly timeless. It's not just held captive in this, 8th century time period that we often understand Guru Rinpoche to have lived within. It goes well beyond that. So maybe we can turn back to Peter to talk about the benefit beyond measure of this kind of activity.
Yeah, thank you, Robbie. And thank you for sharing the story of this revelation. It definitely reminds us that these are very, very potent sites for practice, a place that still has many treasures perhaps to be revealed. So we'll just conclude our sort of presentation, our discussion of Asura and Yangleshö by exactly that, by evoking the benefits of practicing here, of visiting here. One of our sources for these things is so often Organ Topgyal Rinpoche. And there was a time when he was elaborating on the benefits of practice in front of the Asura cave, and we're lucky to have those recordings. And at that time, he spoke about Guru Rinpoche's promise that for us to practice at Asura and Yangleshö for even a single day is equivalent to doing 7 years of retreat elsewhere. That's how powerful the blessings are, how magnifying they are to our practice. Guru Rinpoche himself also said that simply visiting these sites, making a connection with them, having faith in them, saying a prayer there will pave the way to the cities, to spiritual accomplishments. For those who have realization of the nature of mind, their realization will further deepen when they come to Asura and Yangleshö. He said, for those without realization, such realization can take place spontaneously when you come to a place like this, when you come to Asura and Yangleshö. Negative emotions diminish, positive thinking increases, lifespans lengthen. Many, many wonderful things happen just due to the blessings of Guru Rinpoche and Shakyadevi's practice here. Organ Topgyal Rinpoche further reminded us that it's not just at these caves themselves, but the entire region, the entire area is blessed by their practice. Again, if we recall the analogy of the Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha becoming enlightened under the Bodhi tree, that whole area is blessed by that realization. And so at Yangleshö and Asura. And we can also remember, as Robbie's recounting of this recent story suggests, it's not just Guru Rinpoche and Shakyadevi who have come here. There's been countless other realized masters who have traveled here on pilgrimage and have done practice here over the many years since Guru Rinpoche's visit and retreat here. Rigsen Jigme Lingpa, for instance, that great treasure revealer, visited in visions, and not only great masters, but dakinis, dakas, all kinds of sacred realized beings have come here and perhaps are resident here in one way or another. And so when we as practitioners come, make pilgrimage to a place like Asura and Yangleshö, we can keep this in mind. And hopefully through remembering these stories and through opening our own hearts, we can also benefit from these same blessings. So with that, we will now move to another site of Guru Rinpoche's practice in Nepal, Yarinak. Stefan will present that for us.
So I also wanted to share briefly here an image of Kyabche Debu Khyentse Rinpoche and the Dharma of the Rangjung Pema Nintik, because it wasn't included in the presentation that we previously prepared. So just for you all to see briefly, to connect, but you can also see it if you Google it or either look up Kyabche Debu Khyentse Rinpoche or the Rangjung Pema Nintik Dharma. So now we're turning to the sacred site of Yarinak. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, perfect. Just to get this one picture to share. Guru Rinpoche now travels to the sacred site of Yarinak, for which you can see the image here on the screen. It's also in Nepal. It's not too far away from Kathmandu. However, again, by car, it takes relatively long to get there, roughly like 4 hours, and you get to this beautiful cliff with a cave. overseeing the valley. And it's here that Guru Rinpoche enters sort of into retreat on Vajrakilaya to refine the practice that he previously sort of more briefly, but still elaborately practiced at Asura cave in Yangleshö. And while Guru Rinpoche is engaged, and the sources say that Guru Rinpoche stayed here even for a period as long as 12 years, actually accompanied by these masters with whom Guru Rinpoche previously refined the teachings on Vajrakilaya, which is the Kashmiri Pandita Vimalamitra and the Neva Yogi Shila Manju. And all three gained further accomplishment of that practice that they also had combined before. And Guru Rinpoche's accomplishment is that spirits were surrounding the valley, and Guru Rinpoche, in the moment of his profound accomplishment of the Vajrakilaya practice, grabs or takes the practice support, which is the Vajrakilaya, the sort of ritual dagger from the mandala, and he throws it into the air, and it flies and lands in the sort of nearby sandalwood forest, which was home to a fierce yaksha spirit and his attendants that were creating trouble. And when the Vajrakilaya landed, sort of the whole forest lights up in a fire, and the whole forest is burned down. And with this, the spirits are completely subdued, and Guru Rinpoche attains and manifests here as the deity that we also mentioned before in the Barche Lamsel prayer called Duki Shechen. And while he manifests as that, at the same time, the forest regrows more beautifully as before, and Guru Rinpoche establishes these obstacle makers likewise as protectors. And while Noor will now read out the episode from the Barche Lamsel prayer again, you can see at the same time some more images of Yarinak, and then at the end the manifestation of Duki Shechen.
Thank you, Stefan. So the prayer continues. When you established the teaching of the Buddhas and practiced in the slate mountain forest, your furba of approach soared in the wide open sky. You caught it with the Vajra Mudra, rolled it in your hands, and hurled it into the sandalwood forest, which burst into flames, evaporating the lake at its heart. In an instant, you burned the land of the Tirthikas to ashes, and crushed their dark Yaksha lords to dust. O peerless Duki Shechen, with your compassion, inspire us with your blessing. With your love, guide us and others along the path. With your realization, grant us siddhis. With your power, dispel the obstacles facing us all. Outer obstacles, dispel them externally. Inner obstacles, dispel them internally. Secret obstacles, dispel them into space. In devotion, I pay homage and take refuge in you. Om Ahum Benza Guru Padmasambhava.
Thank you. And with these accomplishments complete and Guru Rinpoche manifesting as Duki Shechen, Guru Rinpoche now travels to the sacred site of Chumik Changchup in the Nepal valley as well, not too far away from also Kathmandu, however, still far away from by road. And this will be shared or introduced to you by Robbie.
Yes, thank you. Chumik Changchup is you can reach it in about 4 hours from Kathmandu. It's near the village of Daman in what's called the Rikishwar jungle. And it's a very beautiful area, depending on which time you go. If you go in the spring, it's known for its rhododendron flowers. The whole forest sort of turns into this lush red landscape of rhododendron flowers. And on a clear day, well, both clear and without haze, which is oftentimes rare in Nepal these days. But if you go there and there's no clouds, not during the monsoon, and there's visibility, you can see almost the complete range of the Himalayas that Nepal has. It's very amazing. It's sort of a lower lying area with a very vast view in front of it. It's a few hundred meters lower, maybe 1,000 meters lower even than Kathmandu. But what the site is most renowned for Hindus is actually the it's known as the Sri Rikeshwar Mahadev Mandir. So Hindus make pilgrimage to this site, but aside from that, it seems almost every Guru Rinpoche site is also a Shiva site in Nepal. But aside from that, Tibetans and other Buddhists flock to the site as the spring of awakening connected to Guru Rinpoche's activity. But going to the area, you're kind of transported into this incredible pure space. You sort of, as you're approaching, you'll see off the side of the road stairs that lead directly into the sacred site itself. And along the way, it sort of takes you into this world that feels disconnected from the hecticness of Kathmandu and even some of the areas of rural Nepal that feel like it should be peaceful, but you get there and it's still somehow not tranquil. So a very, very beautiful place. So this is where Guru Rinpoche, well, I suppose we'll turn over to Peter to explain more about the site, but this area, though, is a treasure trove of stories about this land. Is kept alive by the resident yogis there. So if you do visit, and especially if you can speak Tibetan, you can learn a lot more about the place. Still, if you go, the sacred spring that Guru Rinpoche blessed still flows there, and you can bring the water home with you if you wish. There's many blessings held still in the springs. So perhaps Peter can explain the story of Guru Rinpoche's accomplishments at the site of Chumik Changchup and the sacred springs of the land.
Yeah, thank you, Robbie, for leading us to Chumik Changchup. So the story of Guru Rinpoche coming here takes place after the Mahaguru had been in retreat for some time, and then came upon this beautiful kind of jungled forest, and could see that the area was being plagued by bloodthirsty demonesses. The four ladies of the land is how they were called. And Guru Rinpoche immediately knew he had to do something to protect the people of the area. So he immediately created a protection circle around the area. And what this did is it began to starve the four ladies of the land. They were no longer able to basically eat the flesh of the various beings in this area, and they started to become very weak. And of course, Guru Rinpoche is doing this as a way to tame them, essentially. But they would not give up easily. So they then transformed themselves into deities approaching Guru Rinpoche in his seat of meditation, tricksters. And Guru Rinpoche immediately could see that they were trying to trick him. And he took them and he basically trapped them and kept them in this trap for a whole night as he meditated. And this again is part of this process of taming demons and demonesses, which filled the land of Nepal, as you might be able to tell from these stories. So eventually, after a whole night of them being trapped, they gave up and they agreed to Guru Rinpoche's terms, which was to serve as guardians of the Dharma, as Dharma protectors. And specifically, they became protectors within the Vajrakilaya mandala. And they vowed to protect Chumik Changchup, but also Dharma practitioners generally. And it was at this time that Guru Rinpoche took his Kila dagger and he thrust it into the living rock in a valley there in Chumik Changchup. And from there, a spring arose. And this is a spring you can still visit, as Rabbi said. And the spring gives off water that is healing. It's got purifying properties. And basically concluded Guru Rinpoche's taming of the site, of turning it into a holy place, a place of pilgrimage, and also taming the spirits that were there. We also hear in the Barche Lamsel prayer about Guru Rinpoche in his form of Kechok Tsulsang, or eminent master, which is Guru Rinpoche inseparable from Lama Norla, or inseparable from Jambala, which is the deity of wealth. And it is this embodiment of the principle of magnifying and increasing not only wealth, but also, wealth, mundane wealth, but also spiritual wealth. So it was in this form that Guru Rinpoche bound the protectors, as we learn in the Barche Lamsel prayer, which Noor can read for us.
So the Barche Lamsel continues, when placing under oath the protectors sworn to vows, in that supreme place of power, immaculate and enchanting, on the very border joining India and Nepal, you granted your blessing, and as soon as you arrived, the mountain became fragrant, a sweet scent wafting through the air. Even in winter there, lotus flowers bloom, and a spring called Nectar of Enlightenment flows. In this supreme and sacred place, inundated with bliss, O Kechok Tsulsang, clad in dharma robes, your right hand wielding a nine-spoked vajra, your left holding a casket studded with jewels and brimful of the elixir of Rakta. You bind under oath the dakinis and guardians who keep their pledges, and you attain the siddhi of beholding the Yidam deity face to face. With your compassion, inspire us with your blessing. With your love, guide us and others along the path. With your realization, grant us siddhis. With your power, dispel the obstacles facing us all. Outer obstacles, dispel them externally. Inner obstacles, dispel them internally. Secret obstacles, dispel them into space. In devotion, I pay homage and take refuge in you. Om Ahum Benza Guru Pema Siddhihum.
So with this beautiful prayer, we also are coming to a conclusion of this today's webcast. And having laid now the foundation of the Dharma in Nepal, having subdued the spirits, reaped great blessings, and established sacred sites for future disciples to visit, Guru Rinpoche leaves again Nepal and travels in the direction of Bodh Gaya, because there a king was in need of Guru Rinpoche's assistance. There the kingdom was threatened by Tirthikas who challenged the Dharma, and Guru Rinpoche traveled to Bodh Gaya to come in aid of the Dharma. And it was only soon thereafter, so not long after arriving in Bodh Gaya, that actually Dharma King Tritsun Detsen began building Samye Monastery and inviting the great abbot Shantarakshita. And it was then that also in Tibet, the obstacles started to arise. And so upon the request of the great abbot Shantarakshita, the Dharma King Tritsun Detsen sent the messengers to Bodh Gaya, where they met Guru Rinpoche, the great tantric master, and also invited him to Tibet to quell the obstacles there and establish the Dharma. So our journey is slowly now turning towards Tibet. And in the next webcast, we will hear about this invitation Guru Rinpoche briefly again travels through Nepal and then towards Tibet, where, in a sense, where our journey began with the aspiration, if you still remember in the very first webcast of the three brothers at the Bodha Stupa in Nepal, with Guru Rinpoche at that time, Abbot Shantarakshita and Dharma King Tritsun Detsen making this aspiration to spread the Dharma far to the north, to the heart of Tibet. So that is now the point where it's about to come to fruition. So with that, we conclude our webcast for today.
Thank you all. Hope you enjoyed that presentation of all these sites through Nepal. Just as a reminder, as Stefan was speaking of Bodha, this kind of brings us back to our pilgrimage that we will be leading this spring. Bodha is, of course, where we'll begin, but as we today explored both Swayambhu and Asura and Yanglesho caves, both of these sites we will be visiting this coming March. So if you're able to join us, you can connect directly to these blessings, not just with us, but we'll also be joined by senior lamas from Kaining Shedra Bling, and together we'll offer prayers and practices at these profound locations. Sadly, we won't be able to visit Chumik Changchup, at least during our just our week that we have with the pilgrims, because we're visiting Maratika. It would have been too difficult to also tack on Chumik Changchup, and we didn't want to exhaust everybody to a point where they couldn't even enjoy the experience. But if you are able to come to the pilgrimage and can find a little extra time, maybe before or after our guided event, it's very doable in a day from Kathmandu. But for those of you that have not registered, we invite you to do so. There are still a few more spaces available. So just scan the QR code here and you'll find out more information of how to do that. If you have any other questions about the pilgrimage, you can contact us at info@samyetranslations.org. The other announcement that we have is in relation to the Guru Rinpoche books. For those of you who have joined us the last few months, you may have heard this, but the books are once again in circulation. So they were out of print for some time, and many people were asking about them. So what we've done is, for the remainder of this year, while we're presenting this webcast, we've made the books available through Amazon. So if you go on Amazon, you can order a copy and it will be printed for you upon demand. And lastly, we don't have too much time, but we can try to answer a few questions that may have came up in the chat. The first question is, well, there's a question about explaining the Kage deities, what they are.
Maybe we keep this particular question for the future event, because when we enter Tibet and then particular talk about Samye Chimpu, we will also briefly present the history of these Kage deities, because if we now start to get into them, it gets very elaborate. But I think the question that you posed, which is very interesting, you can look up briefly actually on a site called the Rigpa Wiki. It will answer your question on who the Kage deities are with a brief description. Also, we referred here to some of the teachings by Orgyen Topkar Rinpoche. So there's also a website called All OTR, which you can also visit. And there's a brief teaching on the Kage deities as well, with some images, very beautiful images that you can see. And then the next one regarding the 12 Tenma goddesses, we can't post the list of the names necessarily here, but likewise you can find, for example, a list of the names of those also on the Rigpa Wiki website. So these are these two questions. And then the third one was regarding, I think, what I read here regarding the temple in Dakshin Kali, this Mata Mandir. I think it's also mentioned on our Nekor website, so you can check it out there. And if you go to Parping on Google Maps and then a little bit further, I think you see a point noted there for the Mata Mandir temple, as far as I remember. But it's sort of it's when you go towards the valley, it's quite obvious what the temple is. If you visit it itself, it's quite sort of hidden what the temple is referring to. It's not clear that it's connected to the Tenma goddesses if you visit the temple itself, but this is from the stories particular and from the source of Kyabche Tsikhe Choling Rinpoche. So I hope that helps you a little bit further. We would also point it out in our pilgrimage. You can, if you look down from actually Asura Cave, you can see it. It's maybe a little bit more difficult to go there and visit it, but I hope that answers some of the questions. There's one from a request about Guru Rinpoche in Sikkim. So this is talking about Guru Rinpoche in the hidden lands, or called Bayuls. And we would talk about these briefly from more towards the end of our webcast, maybe around May or June, because these count sort of as entire countries that are treasure sites. And we plan sort of there to talk about Guru Rinpoche's legacy, for example, in the Bayuls. But again, there's beyond Sikkim, there are many Bayuls all along the sort of Tibet, Bhutan, Nepal, Sikkim border. So you will find a lot of hidden lands there. And to go through all of them in detail, they all have a very beautiful individual story, would go beyond the current webcast. We're covering some information on the Nekor website, and we will touch upon them briefly next year as well in one of our webcasts. Yeah?
Okay, I think that covers all the questions in the chat. So with that,
there's a final question about when is the next time?
Okay.
So that's the 10th of December. Yeah.
And as Stefan has already previewed a little bit, you can learn more about the Kage deities at that time. So, unless there's any more questions, perhaps we'll conclude here. Thank you guys for joining us, whether it's early in the morning or late at night or in the middle of the day. We're very grateful for you taking the time to share this space with us and dive deeper into the stories of Guru Rinpoche. So with that, we'll dedicate the merit and continue on our way. Through this merit, may all attain omniscience and conquer the enemy, wrong action. May all be freed from samsara's ocean and its pounding waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. See you.